Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Donation. Last week, you heard Matt and I really discuss why nonprofits need to think about how they choose technology partner as part of their broader system. What are the people, the processes, and the platforms that you need to be able to power the strategy for your organization? We're diving into this conversation today where we're going to talk about how you should think about actually selecting a partner and what are the tips and tricks for doing that well. If you didn't listen to part one, definitely go back and listen to part one of this conversation with Matt and I, because it really lays the groundwork for the second part. With that, let's dive in. It reminds me of something I heard one of our customers. So I had the opportunity to interview one of our customers this week to just talk to them about, what their situation was before DonorDoc, and then how did they even decide to start looking, and then what was their process for looking, and then why did they choose DonorDoc, type thing. Like your typical kind of like reflection, right? But I think what was deeply interesting is this organization, even though they were really small, really thought thoroughly about what they needed today. And so they kind of mapped out everything. They're like, hey, this is what we do. And they didn't know all the right words or like what to do. They're just like, this is what we do today. This is what we need to do. This is what our organization is trying to accomplish. They also then took the pause to say, what are we going to need in 2 years or 5 years? Because if we're going to go through this process to evaluate what technology we need to bring, and this was a small org. This isn't like it was 2 staff that hadn't gone through this process really before. And they were like, let's just start with what we know. Let's start with what we think we're going to need in the future. And let's build out this kind of like spreadsheet of like, here's what our needs are. Here's where we're trying to go. Here's where we're going to, go. Then they went out to talk to a bunch of partners, and they did due diligence and talked to 4 or 5 different groups, and then kind of narrowed it down to say, okay, these are the priorities we want. And they ended up with 2 solutions to say, hey, is DonorDoc the right fit? Or is this other partner the right fit? And the thing that they said to me, which I really reflected on, was there was 2 things that they thought were really important. The first was we need to solve for our needs today and our needs tomorrow. Even if we don't fully know them, we just want to make sure that this platform can grow with us. We don't just need enough for today. We want enough for tomorrow. And they were a growing organization. The second thing they said was they wanted to make sure that they didn't get kind of caught up in this group or this platform or this solution has all of these checkboxes and is this price, right? Like you get 10 things for this price, type thing, where you kind of get into this like, well, they're giving us all of this for this single price. Like that seems like a good deal. And what they didn't want to do is get caught up in a seemingly good deal versus what was good for them. And I thought that was such wise words of like, whether you choose someone like DonorDoc or not, like what you're trying to do is not get a good deal. You're trying to get a partner that's going to help stand up your strategy for now and going forward. And I thought that was just so brilliant and like exemplary that kind of like sparked this conversation between you and me and some of our other prospects around like, how do you actually think well about deciding who to partner with? And even for us as DonorDoc, who are we good to partner with? And who are we actually just acknowledging and saying like, hey, we might not be the best fit for you based on what you're trying to accomplish. And that's okay. We don't have to be a best fit for everyone. And we don't have to be the choice for everyone, right? Like it's up to you to decide what's best for you. But the thoughtfulness is what we want to promote.
Yeah. Yeah. I think another thing too, that as you're kind of evaluating platforms is really trying to understand, who are the humans behind it? Like who are the people that are providing this to you, and what is their philosophy around responsiveness and ability to get the help that you need? And really what it comes down to is like, do they really care for me as an organization, for our team, and for what we're trying to accomplish? And I think that one can be a little bit harder to ascertain, I think, during a sales process for sure. But I do think that's a really important factor when like evaluating platforms, because it's not just like, it's like within the organization, it's not just about the product or the tool. Neither is the relationship with that vendor. I think it's naive if we think that we're going to buy a tool and not need support from the people behind that tool. And so, evaluating that and trying to understand that, I think is a really, really important piece to the puzzle here.
Yeah, totally. And I think just to be practical is I think there are questions that are worth asking in the sales process.
Uh,
And we try to be proactive with sharing this during our calls with prospects who are considering DonorDoc, which is just like, who's behind the company? Why did they start the company? Are they still there? Who's running the company? How are you guys funded? How many customers do you have? What does this historically look like? How did you start? How did you get to where you are? And I think the reason all of these things are important is because it starts to bridge into what you're talking about, Matt, which is like, who are the people behind the platform that are going to be making decisions that are going to be best for the platform? And are those aligned with what we want as a customer? And I think it's super important to know what the motivations of the platform are that are driving the decisions that may impact me now or in the future, right? Like, and we can't predict the future, and we have to choose what's best in the moment based on the data we have and the information we have, right? But I do think it's essential to at least understand what that is. And I think these are the questions that, your standard CRM evaluation checklist aren't necessarily going to surface. And they're the things that I think people that come to us and they say, we're like, hey, what's going on? Why are you considering changing? And they were like, well, we made this decision, but we didn't ask the right questions because we didn't realize that this, and this was going to happen. Or we didn't know that what they meant was they had this, but it's actually not fully integrated with this. Or they have this opportunity that costs more money. Or like all of these little nuanced things that's like, it's not that you didn't do due diligence. It's just like we didn't ask the right questions to get the response we actually needed to hear about what it was going to be like to be a true customer now and into the future. I was on the call with an executive director yesterday and she's like, hey, my board's going to ask these questions. And I was like, that your board should ask those questions. Like, why are you partnering with this work? Are they sustainable? What's going on? What is their roadmap for the future? Who's running the company? Like, those are really strong questions that, again, you may not have as your default thing, but I think it's important to ask. What does support look like? Who are the humans behind this? How do you treat your employees? There's little things around culture and things that like they might have support, but if their company culture is about efficiency and optimization of resources, like those support reps might be running on empty. And so their ability to serve you well might be limited based on, what that is. And I'm not actually referring to any specific platforms or anything. So I want to be transparent there. But it's like, that's what we're trying to get at is like, what is the quality of hospitality and what you said, Matt, care am I going to receive both in my product experience, in how they think about innovating the product, but then ultimately how are they going to train, support, onboard me into these tools because I'm going to need help. And I think that was a brilliant insight.
Yeah. If we to kind of transition into, I think systems thinking and like technology evaluation and thinking isn't necessarily like super intuitive, I think, for a lot of the sector that we serve.
Or it's at least not something they've gone through a lot before. I think that's what we find with our buyers is like, this is the first time they're going through a technology buying decision, type thing. Yeah.
So what are some thoughts or guidance that you have for those teams that maybe haven't gone through this process before? So we've talked already about some of the criteria that they should be evaluating, things they should be asking, but what are some other like important nuggets of information that you think are relevant as I'm going through this process, maybe for the first time, or again, technology is not my strong point. And so how do I think about this the right way as I'm going through this?
Yeah, there's a few things. So let me give like 3 tidbits and then I'll give one summary, maybe kind of like conclusion. I think the first is that your software should always serve your strategy, not dictate it. Like your strategy, what you're trying to accomplish, who you're trying to serve, what programs you're running, whether that's events or direct mail or development or fundraising, like all of that is more important than the software you have first and foremost, because the software needs to serve your strategy, not drive it, to be perfectly frank. And I think too often it's we choose software as a strategy replacement. If you don't have clarity on how you work or what you're trying to work on, like no individual tool is going to fix that for you. And so often you just really need to start with like, what problems are we actually trying to solve here? And kind of who is our team? Maybe that's just you. And you're like, honestly, like what capacity do I actually have? What aptitude do I have with technology or tools? What type of support may I need? What's like truly important this week that I really need help solving, right? And you may only know the problems, you may not know how tools solve them. But I think that's the first thing. It's that we said this a few episodes ago around awareness. It's just becoming aware of like, what are we actually trying to do? And maybe where are the hiccups and challenges that we're running into there. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing would be around like first principles is like, what are the things that you have to do as an organization. And so like some of that is like, okay, we need to manage data and our donors and gifts, right? Like where is that going to live? We need to receipt our donors. We need to be able to receive gifts in the mail or receive gifts online. And we need to be able to document that stuff, right? That's first and foremost. We need to manage those donors and track that and be able to report on that and just be a good stewardship of that information. The second thing is we need to engage our donors, right? Like we need to communicate with them, maybe through email, through text message, but also maybe through direct mail or the phone or thank you notes or all of these different things. And we want to be able to track when that's happening. We not only want to know when that happens, but we also want to be able to note that that did happen. So in the future, someone else would be able to know that. And then lastly, we need to be able to like know what matters most at any given time. So usually we need to be able to report on what's happening and then be able to have that inform, okay, where do we focus? So it's like, hey, these donors haven't given in 12 months, you should reach out to them. Like that's super helpful information because that's going to help inform how you engage and how you steward your donors. But really, it's kind of down to those three things, right? Like, I need to track some information. I need to be able to take action or do outreach against that. And then I need to be able to have something in between that kind of like reports on what's going on and helps inform, segmentation, some of these big words that we use. But it's really like, who should I connect with? What should I connect with them about? And what should I ask them to do or suggest that they do with our organization? Like, it's simplistically around those things. And so like we need to do those jobs first. Outside of that, there's upsides, but like we need to be able to do that well. And we need to have that foundation set up so that we can be successful. And I think the last thing would be is when we talk about systems, we can often default back to like DonorDoc. DonorDoc is a system. And it's like, no, DonorDoc is a software or a platform or a tool. Your system is the combined effort of your tools, platform, software, whatever word you want to use, and your people and the processes or how they use this, right? So that's your system. So it has to be taken into consideration how that is all going to work together. Because you can buy the best tool on the market, and it's like, this is the most fancy tool. We're spending a bunch of money on it. We're investing in your boards. Like, great, we're taking the risk. We're going to invest in this. If you're a single person that now has to go utilize that, spaceship that you just bought, like you're not going to get the yield out of that investment that you might have expected or maybe were sold into. So you just have to be really honest with like, what can we actually do to be able to support our strategy? So hopefully that's helpful as a summary.
Yeah, I think it is. We were just talking to somebody this morning, another person in the space, and the conversation kind of got around to like that there's people leaving the space that have experience, or there's new people coming into the nonprofit sector who maybe don't have the same level of experience, and we need to be able to kind of guide them. What would you say to an organization who says, Noah, like, here's what we're doing, and we want to be doing more. Like aspirationally, we believe that there's more we can be doing, but we're not really sure where to start. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Should they be talking to a consultant? Is this something that the right software can help guide them through? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's tons of great education out there for you to look at. But if I truly was like, hey, I just walked into this is what we're doing. We know it's not enough or we need to grow. My core thing comes back to like these basic principles, which is all nonprofits are just a bunch of people coming together to work on a problem. And so the first thing I would say is, are we clear on what problem we're trying to solve? And who are the people currently working on that? And that might be us. And I'm including our supporters, our donors. Like, let's go make sure we understand like why they're connected with our organization and like what's going on. So I would actually go talk to your donors before I go talk to a consultant. And that might be a hot take, but for me, I would be like, who are my best supporters right now? And why do they care about this organization? And why are they connected with our organization? And how did they get connected with our organization? Because I think you can glean so much by understanding who your best donors are now to help inform not only how you cultivate more of your current donors to be more like your better donors, but you can also go help find your next best donors by understanding how your current supporters are. So if you were truly like, we know it's not enough, we know this different things, I would just simplify it. Like we're a bunch of people trying to solve a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I like
What
that.
is that problem and who are the people? And like let's ground ourselves in that reality first. Then let's go out and start building, maps and spreadsheets and tools and different things. And also the second thing I would just say is like, once you find out something that you're like, oh, what was interesting about this donor is like they gave to us because of this event. And then like we reached out to them and had a call and like then they became a better supporter with us. That's interesting. I'd be like, okay, how many other people can now we just go call? Like we don't have to think about the full 7-month journey map, et cetera. We love spending time in like spreadsheets, slide decks, and databases, to be honest. And it's like, if we just find something that's working, like, let's go see, can we do that 5 more times for people that aren't doing that and like just go call? Like, so start anywhere. As soon as you find an insight that you're like, that connection or touch point helped us generate a better connection with supporters. Can I just replicate that? Like, can I just go do that a few more times and see what else I learn? Then let's add in the complexity of like, we're going to have a 7-part donor series, et cetera. And I think we try to do this really well when you sign up with DonorDoc, which is like, hey, like, here's the 6 things that if you were just trying to build your organization like a little bit further, here are the 6 things or milestones within the donor's journey with your organization that you should focus on. And I think that's a great example of just like starting with the foundations of like, we know this works because we know how we feel when people connect, appreciate, and kind of like build confidence in us that we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. Like that's what it is. People coming together to work on a problem together. I know that's oversimplification, but like that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree. If you were give one kind of final piece of advice for our listeners who are they're at this point where they've got to apply systems thinking, I've got to figure out my people, my process, and my platform. What's that piece of advice that you would give?
So I think it's advice we've given on previous episodes, which is just to allow yourself to simply start with awareness, which is like what's true, like what's going on today. And then pull yourself into curiosity about that. Like, why is that? Like, what is going on here? How does that work? And like allowing yourself to kind of be a student of your own organization again so that you can then inform yourself on like, okay, now what do we do about it? And like, what do we actually need? And I think if you don't start with like awareness and then curiosity, it's really difficult to like turn things around. And I think we've talked about that with even like how you use your time as a leader or how you advise your team on what they use their time for or what programs to run or how to even think about fundraising. And it's like, do I really care about DAF fundraising or do I care about text giving or do I care about this event or these auctions or different things? Or should I be on Facebook or should I be on TikTok? I heard that like the next biggest thing is communities on Nextdoor. Like, I don't know. And it's like, that can be overwhelming. And if we just kind of zoom back in and say like, what's true today? Why is that true? What can we do about it? Is super important. Even when it comes down to choosing technology and evaluating what tools you have.
I think my piece of advice would be go into it with eyes wide open that these tools, these software products are not a silver bullet to fix all the problems within your organization. And that really comes back to that systems thinking of, how does this all fit together with my people, my processes, and now these platforms. But I think we hear and see that a lot where there's this mentality that all we need to do is get this new software tool and then it's going to fix all these things. And I just think that is uh, that's a way of thinking that's going to lead to disappointment a lot of the time. And so,
Mhm.
think in terms of these systems, not in terms of what's the shortcut I can take to try and, the easy button, so to speak. I'm not sure that honestly exists.
Yeah. That just reminds me of one more thing that something came up twice in the last week. Is there's also this thinking when you're new to a situation that you need to know what you're doing and fix the things that are problems before you go try to like move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And typically this is around like data.
Mm-hmm.
And so the two orgs I'm referencing were like, our data is a disaster. And I know it, and I just got in, and we're working on it. We're chiseling away on nights and weekends of like fixing the data, et cetera. And to me, that's like living in an apartment and trying to clean the apartment at the same time, where you're just like cleaning one area and then living in the rest, and then cleaning that area and then living in the rest, and then cleaning this. Where sometimes like it does take you to kind of empty the apartment, look at all of it and be like, what do we want to take with us? What do we need? What do we don't need? And whether you move back into that same apartment or you move into a new apartment or a new house that's actually better fit for you is really up to you. But I think this like acceptance of like, it's messy and that's okay. We don't need to solve all of the problems before we try to make a change or think about how we evolve. Maybe that's a better way. It's like evolution versus like, a whole new thing is super important. That leans into what you're talking about. It's just like being curious, asking questions, open eyes. Don't feel like you have to know everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great, Noah. Good discussion. I think a lot of good nuggets of information here for people that are faced with figuring out what's next for their organization from a platform or a tool standpoint. So thank you for the discussion today, for all of your expertise and knowledge. Thank you all for listening and joining Noah and I this week on this episode of Beyond the Donation. We'll be back with another episode, and we're excited to continue to talk about how to run a lean and efficient and effective nonprofit.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.